Joe, you're still muted.
Okay. All right. It's better, right? All right. So the morning lecture, I just slacked it out, is callbacks. There it is, callbacks. And I'm also have this REPL that I'm just going to kind of work through some of the things that are in the lecture, but I'm going to do what's in the lecture, and I'm going to do it just similar way, but a little different. I don't really care for the whole foo bar thing. I never really cared for it. Never really, to me, like really hit home, creating functions called foo bar. So I'm going to walk you through kind of what the callbacks are. And, lecture only has a handful of notes here also. So we can cover what's going on in here in this REPL, okay? What I'd like you to do with the REPL, and once again, I have lots of success with the REPLs and the code pens where people could follow, is what you would do is take this REPL, right? Copy that URL, keep it, because that's mine. Then you would fork this REPL. So the minute you start typing in, it forks it, but also clicking on this little pencil button and clicking on fork allows you to fork it. The minute you fork it, it only forks it into the same tab, and then you have your own version, but you've lost my version, right? So what you could do is open up another tab, put my version in there, right? So at least one version could be mine. So anything that I type, you get lost, you want to copy paste, you would just want to sit back and watch. You can watch. All you'd have to do is refresh the page and you'd see my stuff, and then this tab could be yours, right? And you could be typing in, okay? It's kind of how I would do it. This way you never get lost. I taught a class yesterday where we were doing like, go into this directory, do this thing, and 15 minutes later, people are like, where are we supposed to be again? I'm making change, and it drove me crazy because I'm like, I slacked it out. I said be in the directory, and like people are all over the place. So I like when we don't have to use directories or anything. You have the code, you can see the code at any point in time, okay? I'm going to close this one because I don't need it open. I was just allowing you to do that. All right. So what we're going to be doing is working with callbacks, okay? I'm just going to put some notes here. I'm going to use the double or multi-line JavaScript comment. This is just a multi-line. Let me zoom in a little bit. Maybe that's better. If I zoom in a little bit, this is a multi-line comment, right? Multi-line JavaScript comment instead of those single comments all the time. And so, our lecture is callbacks. Okay, well, what the hell is a callback, right? So a callback is a function that is passed into another function. Really, that's a callback. A function that's passed into another function. So, last week you saw all those kind of crazy data types and data types and data types, and like functions calling other functions, functions returning other functions, this whole convoluted spectrum. Callbacks are something you're going to see and use all the time. So when a function is passed to another function, it must be called within the other function, right? I got to call the first function, and that should execute the second function. It's a series of events that happen, okay? So that's really what it is, function that calls another function, okay? What we want to do, just as the demo here to kind of see how we can develop doing this technique, is I want to kind of console log two different messages 2 times each, okay? 2 times each, all right? So I want to create a loop that console logs the same message twice, or whatever in the thing. Maybe not the most practical thing, but it's what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it the long way, and then we're going to make it really, really concise towards the end, and you can get the real aspect of what it is. So phase 1, 2 for loops, right? And 2 for loops that console log a different message. Okay, this would be the long way. So I would do like a for loop, let I is equal to, I'm just going to do it 2 times, right? Because that's what I said anyway. While I is greater than 2. Oh, I is 2. I is 2. I is greater than 2. I plus equals 1. And then we would console log something. So console log, say, I don't know, the first console log, I'm just going to say looping over, oh, you know what I'm going to do here too? Here we go. We're going to use string interpolation, right? The backticks, looping over I. Okay? String interpolation. If you refresh your REPL that I slacked out of my original one, you should have this code. Okay? You can confirm you have the code. You should have the code. All right. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it here. And instead of saying looping over I will change this message to say something like maybe I is now, just 2 different messages. That's really all I want to do. And if I were to run this loop right here, right? For loop, run it. Why is it not?
I should be less than 2.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. My brain was on the reverse string of text. All right, there we go. Sweet. So I get the 2 messages. That's great. What you start to see here is repetition of code, right? 2 looping constructs, each one just outputting a different string of text. So I would probably think to myself, what if I could create a function that maybe did the loop itself, right? And either it was configured to loop 2 times, or it was a bit dynamic that could loop as many times as you wanted to, right? So maybe instead of console log 2 different messages, a set number of times, right? Let's do this. I'm going to repeat. I'm going to create now a function. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Const repeat is equal to times. Okay, so I just created a function that doesn't have anything inside of it yet, but I'm going to take one of these console logs, boop, I'm going to put it in here, one of the for loops with the console logs, okay? So I just nested it inside of it, right? Now it should do, if I call it, and I'm going to just comment these out because I don't really need these running anymore. This was phase 1. Phase 2, I am going to repeat, and I'm just going to run it. I'm not going to pass it in anything. I just want to confirm that it would run the message. Okay, I run it. Look, it runs perfectly fine, right? I'm making it more dynamic now that it can take in a number, and with that number, it could run as many times as I tell it to run. So maybe instead of 2 times, I'm just going to replace the number with times, and now I can give it a number. Maybe I want it to run 3 times. Look, it runs 3 times. If I want it to run 10 times, it runs 10 times. It's a bit more dynamic, right? Let me go back to 2 times. It's dynamic now. It's multi-purpose. I can reuse this function to do this one thing. The only issue here now is, I would have to either create 2 functions with 2 separate names. That one would console log this message and the other would console log the other message, right? I don't want to do that either, but that would be the next iteration. But I don't want to do that. I think we can do something a little better than that. What if I could pass in the message? So here's the thing, like, what if I could pass in a message here? That would kind of make it more dynamic too, right? If I passed in a message here, then it could run that particular message, right? It could do a thing. It could console log, we could grab the message here. Now, what I want to do is give it, I want the next iteration of this. All right, so I'm going to take this. I'm going to comment it out. I'm going to say phase 3. We're now going to do this. I am going to give it a callback. Okay, and a callback is a function passed into another function. So this is a callback. Okay, so with this callback, I can, instead of doing this here, I can run this callback, okay? It should be a function, right? So a callback is a function passed into another function. This should be a function, which means I need to call that function. And functions do things, right? So if a function is supposed to do something, how would I create this to be a bit more dynamic? Well, watch. If it takes in a function, I can do this. I can give it a function. I just gave it a function. I am going to do this. I'm going to paste in the message now, okay? So instead of hard coding the message here, right, which makes that function, it makes that function too static because the message was hard coded. So I would have to either create two separate functions and give them two separate messages, and I'm back to square one. I'm like kind of back to this thing over here. Or I make the function dynamic so I could pass in a message and just at any point in time and call it this way. And this function becomes dynamic because I can make it do more than just run a message. I can make it do whatever I want it to do. Okay, so I do have to kind of configure this a little bit now. Okay, so I'm going to run the function and let's see what happens. Let's see if I get the output that I'm expecting. Well, I get I is not defined, and I expected this error. We have to do something right now because I is not defined. Well, where is I not defined? I'm going to take a look at the error, right? So it says on line 32 at character 5, I is not defined. All right. So that means that callback, the function, which is really this function right now. This is the callback. That's our callback function. It is trying to access the I character. Now, I mean, I is right here. You almost might think it should be able to access that character, right? Because callback should just be like, oh, you want I? Look, here's I should use it. I could be able to use it, but it can't use it. This function right here, this anonymous function, is kind of looking like at the global scope here for I, and it doesn't see it. Doesn't see it in here. So that means we need to pass it the letter I. We need to pass it something. So I'm just going to, oh, I don't know what just happened. Okay, that was a little weird. I'm going to pass it I, which means I have to pass it I here. Now if I run it, now it works. Okay? So what we're doing here is I'm passing a function to the repeat function, which makes this function a bit more dynamic because not only can I run a console log, but I can do whatever I want in there. I can run any amount of code inside of this code block. Whatever code I want to run, I can run. It does not matter. I can run that code. All right? It's important to know. Anything that I want can be run in here. All right, so this kind of makes it a little bit more dynamic too, right? I feel like I'm still back at the phase where if I wanted to do this, I could copy and paste these two and change this message to be the other one now too. So I feel like I'm kind of back in the same situation as multiple things, right? But it is, in the end, it is a bit more dynamic, right? The function is versatile. The repeat function is versatile. I can give this repeat function 3 times, and I can give it a different message at runtime, right? So if I run it, now I have this one ran twice, and this one ran 3 times with a completely different message, right? Okay. Another way to do this also would be to create other supporting functions that console log different messages also, okay? So I could have also created some other supporting functions like this. So I'm going to go to kind of phase 4 now. Here we go. Phase 4. Adding callback to repeat that is passed in a named function. So passing in a function to do the repeat function, but this is an anonymous function, right? I'm passing in here an anonymous function. That's what this is, right? Does this function have a name? No. A function without a name is anonymous, okay? And I'm using this. What's this syntax here? What do we call that? What's that syntax?
So like ES6 or arrow maybe?
Yeah. So what I'm using here for this syntax right here is fat arrow. Fat arrow ES6. Okay. So it's ES6 syntax. Let me just do this. Fat arrow. Okay. And fat arrow is this. That's a fat arrow. Okay. It's really a function. And it's a fat or fat arrow function, maybe. Well, we just call it fat arrows, but it's a fat arrow function is really what it is. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to go down here. I'll create maybe some other functions. I'll use the function keyword so we can kind of go back and forth. So now I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a function, and I'm going to call it console log1. I'm going to give it this I property here, and I will just console log. Take that, I'm gonna put it in here. Boop. Okay. Actually, this is phase 4. So I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna put it down here because this is phase 4. I'm gonna take these two, I'm gonna put them over here, and I'm gonna comment these out. All right, so phase 4, I'm gonna comment this out. We don't need this running, right? We actually do need this. We need to keep this running up here. Okay. So I am now going to create this. It says I is now. I'm going to create a second one that is function console log 2. And I'm going to change that message to be this one. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is for this one, I'm going to get rid of that anonymous callback and give it console log 1. It's taking in a named function. I'm going to give this one console log 2. It's taking in a named function. Okay, and this should, if I run it, still work as normal. It's working as it should work. Okay. So to me, this becomes a bit more dynamic also because now I have this function that is reusable, right? I can take the console log 1 function and use it anywhere else I want in my code, right? And all I have to do is call it, pass it in a number or something, and it will log that thing. It doesn't matter what this thing is. It doesn't have to be an integer. It could be a string of text. It could be whatever I want it to be, okay? This way was still a bit less dynamic, a little bit more dynamic than the previous ones, being that when I call repeat, I give it a number of my choosing, and I give it a message of my choosing at the time. But I have to keep doing this, which means this console log message needs to be written every time I call that function. Well, what if I could encapsulate that code inside of a function that all I have to do is call this one function, right? And I'm doing that here. The callback in this instance is console log 1, okay? And then the second instance, it's console log 2, okay? So this callback is whatever function you want to pass it. It didn't have to be these messages. It could be anything that you wanted to say. It really doesn't matter. This callback is kind of expecting a number to run, but it doesn't have to be, okay? Could ignore the number and just do whatever it wants to. All right? How are we feeling about callbacks?
When you're doing the callbacks, you don't need the parentheses to call the function.
We're here?
Yeah.
No, because when you're passing it in, it is just a parameter. And so I'm saying is like, here's the function, but don't call it now. Like, I don't know when in your code. So this code right here, so this repeat function could be 100 lines of code, right? I don't necessarily know where in that 100 lines of code you expect to call it. I don't really know where you're going to use it. I just know somewhere in your repeat function, you are going to use it. It's up to you to decide where and when you use it. So when you pass it in here, it's just kind of like a placeholder. Like, here you go. Here's the functions, the strings, the numbers that you need, right? And then you do the thing that you need to do with it, okay? It's kind of like a recipe. If I had like a bunch of ingredients and I was like, I'm looking at an onion, it's up to you. Do you slice the onion? You know, do you peel the onion? Like, what do you do with it? It's up to you at the time that the recipe decides, right?
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
I guess I think you might have just answered this, but I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around how it's different from just calling a function. And I think you just answered it because I think maybe you said it was just that you could put it anywhere in that code and you wouldn't have to specify maybe when it runs.
Sure. Yeah, and that's the case. The idea here is that this repeat function, right? It does something very specific. The idea is to repeat something a number of times, right? Now, the number of times, right, is up to us. We can say how many times, anywhere from 1 to 1,000,000. It doesn't really matter, right? And then the callback makes it even more dynamic, like, well, what do you want to repeat? And you're like, I don't really know what I want to repeat right now. I don't know, but I want something to repeat. All right, well, so when every loop, what do you want to do? I don't really know right now. I don't have that answer. But I got code that if I needed to loop a certain number of times and I needed to do something a certain number of times, I have base code now that allows me to do just that. So this repeat function is very flexible. That allows me to do stuff, and I can pass it in any functions I want to, and in every instance of the loop, it will do just that, okay? But you still must call the function. The callback function must be called at some point, right? Otherwise, I'm passing in a static string of text that is a function, but until you call the function, it does nothing. Now, it's not a living thing anymore. It's just like, hey, it's like playing one of those like Simon games where you're like, stop, freeze. All right, go now. And then you go, right? Unless it's called, it does nothing. It's a static thing. Because if I removed that and I ran it, I get nothing because the function isn't being called now. It's just like, I'm here. I'm not running, but doing this activates the function, right? Adding the parens activates or calls the function, making it do whatever you want, okay? What else? Any other good questions out there? That was a good question. Those are two really good questions.
Why do you have to pass I again to the console log 1 or 2 function when it's already being passed into the original repeat function in the callback?
So are we talking on why
Right
on
here.
line 54? I need
On
to
54, exactly.
Asking
Okay.
about the scope of I. Chris?
Yeah, it's the scope of I. You want to explain it, Tara? You want to give it your best shot?
No, because I'm still getting my mind around the callbacks.
Okay, I like that. All right, so let's go back here. So this callback, you might expect that it should know what I is, right? But its point of view is like, so say if I had the best example that, and I was trying to think of like the best way to explain this is this. If I imported the callback function from another file and I imported it in here, the callback function could see everything in the other file, right? But it may be limited to what it could see in this file. And this file can't see anything that's in the other function, in the other file. Only that function has a conduit to the other file and all the code that's in it. So if you need code in the other file, you have to go through that function because it's the conduit to this other pool of code. So when I import that function, this function has access to all this additional code, right? And so, but this file doesn't have access to that code directly. It has to go through this. It's kind of like the reverse now. Like we imported this function, doesn't know that it kind of resides in here. And it's like, hey, I live in this scope. And so I can see everything that's in this scope, but I can't see everything that's in this scope necessarily. So I have to pass in something to let it know, like, it's like, I'm waiting for something. I don't really know what I is. Because this I here exists inside of this little bracket of scope. These two brackets become what this can really see at this moment in time inside of here. It can't really see it, okay? That's why. That's a good question, because you assume you should be seeing it, right? Anything else?
So it seems like this is kind of like we're putting arguments inside of arguments within arguments, kind of that sort of thing.
Yeah. So you can see why last week when we were doing all this stuff, I think the last lecture that we did really went maybe a little bit farther, went farther down that road of development where you will see things like that, but you won't see them now. But you will see this structure that we're using right now is something that you will see. Okay, one of those instances that you do see this kind of structure is this. Okay, let's do is run. All right, I'm going to just stop these two so they don't run anymore. So nothing runs. All right. One instance where this is being used is something called set, and I'm going to do set interval. Okay, set interval takes in another function and then does something, and then a number of times. So I'm going to say, or every set interval means every 1 second, do something. Okay, so this is kind of reverse. It's like instead of doing it a number of times, it's actually saying every second run this callback. I just kind of swapped the positions of repeat, right? Repeat took a number and then did a callback. This one does a callback and then a number. So set interval could do this. I'm just going to take this. Actually here, console log inside set interval, right? I'm just going to run. Now watch what happens. If I run it, it keeps running. Set interval will keep running until I stop set interval. Okay? It won't stop. It keeps going. Okay, so I actually have to stop this. Another one is called set timeout. Okay? I'm going to run it. Set timeout waits a certain number of seconds before it runs. So I'm going to say 3 seconds, run the code. So wait, 1, 2, 3, boom. Okay? So set timeout and set interval are both using callbacks. They're both using functions. That's what they're doing. Okay, now I could have done this. I have this console log up here, so I should be able to do this. I think if I passed in that console log. So if I got rid of this and I said console, let me say console log 1. Let me just see if this works. I'm going to do it in 1 second. Let me see. Does it work? Do you see it works? This is truly the flip case of repeat, right? Didn't repeat do a number and then a callback? So if I flip this, I can say, I'm going to do set interval again. This just flips it. The callback is in the first position, and the number of seconds that you wait between iteration is in the second position, okay? And so once again, if we do this, do you see how console log now becomes this reusable thing? I mean, in here, we are getting, it's not outputting the 1 because there is no 1 there, right? It can't do that. But if console log did need to have something passed to it, whatever it was, I would have to take this code, I'm just going to comment it out, and go back to the original code and do something like this. and I would pass it something, whatever it is. I'm just going to say, I don't know, 1, and it'll always, 1 is now 1. That's really it. Okay. And it'll just keep doing this over and over and over again. Okay. So this callback allows me to execute, which allows me to call another function. You see, a 1 callback function calling another callback function. See how that works? I'm just going to comment this out. So that's why this structure, even though this function only has 1 line of code, it's still a good choice because it's reusable. And I never have to write console log out or looping over ever again. All I have to do is call that function by its name, pass it in a number, and it does the same thing over and over and over again. It's repetitive. It's reusable. When you create functions, create them with the intent that they are reusable, standard input, standard output, and I can use it more than one time. Okay?
Yo, quick question here. Maybe you already explained this, but I just want to make sure. How, like, you are setting the I variable on the first function that you created, and then how does it recognize that variable, because it's inside the for loop? I thought that it will only work inside there. So how does it work outside, like on the other function when you call I? How does it know it has been already defined, because it was never defined within that function? It was.
Oh, I see. I see. So you're saying on line 54, this I right here.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
How does it know?
Yeah, because it's not a global variable. So
no, it's not. But
Oh,
remember, this I is a argument. So when I create the function, I give it an argument of I, which is, an argument is a placeholder, right? I create an argument and I'm like, at some point in time, you're going to give me a parameter of value that I can put into the argument position. And then inside my function, I becomes the value that you passed it, becomes the name and the value. So inside of here, I am calling this callback, which is truly this function name. I'm calling that function because over here when we did this, when I'm going to undo maybe the second repeat here. Let's do the first repeat. I'm passing in this function, right? But I'm just passing in as a static thing, like here is the function. The function still knows it's this. Like the function has every understanding that in the end, it is this thing with a parameter that takes, within an argument that takes in a parameter. It knows that. And so in here, this callback name, right, this argument truly becomes console log 1. It's almost like it transforms itself in just to another name. It's almost like if I went, say I want to go to a party and I want to go where no one knows my real name. I walk in that party and I give them a new name. I am that, I could be Peter all day. And people would be like, you're Peter, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's right. That's who I am. Right? Mm-hmm. Inside of this function, it's like I went to a party and I decided to call myself something different. Inside of this function, callback is truly console log 1 or console log 2.
So under that assumption, we could like change I to a different variable. Like could it be B, C, or it always has to be
Sure,
I?
yeah. So in here, so let's do this. I'll just call this num.
Okay.
Right? So I'll say num, just so that we understand. So when console log num, when this runs, we just should see the number. It still should work, right? So let me run it.
Yeah.
It still works, right? I'm gonna, because this is I is now, right? Yeah. So it still works, right? Yeah. I mean, I only used I to like bridge the gap so you could see I, but maybe using the same variable name confuses, right?
Gotcha. Okay, now I get it. Thank you.
So I could say even like num, I could change everything up and now it's completely different, right? The syntax is different. The parameters are different, but it still needs to take in I because I is a number during the loop. It is a number. We have to pass in a number. It's expecting a number. If it doesn't get the number, it doesn't break the function. It just outputs undefined because you never gave it a number.
Yeah, but we don't have to. We cannot change the I on the callback app, right? Like, can we put num there too, or no?
No, because num in here means nothing.
Yeah. Okay.
I would only be able to do that if I was like, let num equal to I, and then I could do that. Right?
Okay.
But that's kind of redundant. Like, I don't want to do that. It's
Yeah.
just more code. Right?
Okay. Thank you.
You got it. Cool. All right. I think we're good. Once again, you have the code too. You have the code. The lecture covered the same thing. The lecture was like, here's an anonymous callback, and then we're calling the thing, right? And then they pass in a parameter. They create two functions. This one has a parameter. And then over here, they call parameter one where bar takes in foo. Once again, I don't really like these examples. To me, they're not as intuitive as something like bar and foo. I kind of get lost. But we just did the same thing. We just created a looping construct. I thought it was more practical. And it's the same thing. They just go and now they created multiple functions where bar, it becomes flexible. The bar function becomes flexible. It can be passed foo. It can be passed awesome. We did the same thing. We passed in two different messages. This one was a message. This was a message. We just split it off into something different. Okay. Same thing. And then went through the set timeout to show you a practical use case for where it's being used, okay? So your job now is the labs. There's a callback lab. So let me select out the lab. Morning lab. Callbacks and group. Okay, there's the lab. Oh, hey, Jordan, I just got your message. I'm hoping I was able to answer those students' questions. I did get a question in regards to maybe running over the beginning syntax for callback functions. If there's any questions here, you can ask them. I'm hoping that the questions that were asked, I answered those questions that you might have run past Jordan or Paul. Okay.
Actually, since it sounds like other people have questions about the syntax, looking at line 62 and 63, like why wouldn't you just write it like 62? It's so much more simple looking. Whereas in 63, there's like parentheses and then two parentheses, and that just seems weird to me.
Okay, so if I want to pass something to console log one, if I want to pass a value, I can't do it here. Let's just test it out. You want to test it out? Watch. If I try to do this here and say, what was I passing it? Just the number one, right? That's all I was passing. Let's see, does this work? It stopped running, right? It's not running anymore. It ran like one. Oh, is it? Hold on. No. I only got the number two, right? I'm going to run it again. Run it again. Nothing happened at all. All right, so now let's take a look. If I get rid of this, let's just make sure it works. Now it's working. Huh, right? It's like, why would it not work if I call it immediately? Why would that stop it from running, right? And that's because we can't call the function when we pass it in. Like if you call the function in the parameter, it executes and it throws everything off. It's like, whoa, 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 you weren't supposed to be called just yet. It's not your time. We called it ahead of time, which really threw everything off. And the function's like, well, I don't really know what to do. Like you passed me something that's like running, that's live. I don't know what the hell to do with that. So I'm kind of flipping out under the hood. I'm breaking because I don't know. So if you want to pass something to this, then you need to do it within another callback. If it's not in this other callback, it just won't run. That's the way it is. Okay.
Gotcha.
Sweet. All right. So you're going to jump into the lab. It's about 12:42 now. You're going to take it to lunch, right? We're going to go to lunch from 1 to 2. So start work on the lab. I think you're going to need some more time when you come back. So we're probably going to take a little bit of time after when you come back for lunch to keep working on the lab. But officially from 1 to 2, we'll go to lab. So for the lab, here you're going to write a function that takes in a parameter and logs it. Create a function that logs hi. Invoke the first function by passing in the second function as a parameter, right? Callback. Passing in a function as a parameter is callback. Okay? You should see the function, reference it, right? You can keep working through this. And then there's this electric mixer kind of one where you get to create functions and pass in attachments and things, okay? It's kind of cool. It's fun and cool. It's about 45 minutes for the lab. That's the time frame. So between the 15 minutes you have about now and then when we come back, we can keep working on it, okay? So let me go into breakout rooms here. And I will recreate the breakout rooms this time. Recreate. And I'm going to automatically create them 2 to 3. Automatically create. Just going to get Paul out of there. Paul into room 9. All right. Paul 9 and Jordan. Let me get you out of there. Go to room 9 and move to 2. Move 2. Move 2. Move 2. All right. Looks like we got about. Actually, here we're going to do breakout rooms of 4. Let's do that. 4, 4, 3. Tara's gonna go breakout room 5. All right, looks like we got good breakout rooms of 4. All right, I set you off. Keep working until 1, but take your lunch from 1 to 2. Come back. We'll keep working on it for a little bit afterwards. Open all breakout rooms. We're off to the races, people. Off to the races. All right. Looks like everyone's back. All righty. So what was, I'm just going to maybe capture some feedback. How do you feel about the lab? Questions do you have regarding the lab? Okay. I'm going to start a thread here. Just put any questions that you might have about the lab, anything. I know some had asked for some practical examples, like of the callbacks. That's been the general consensus, right? So I steered away from foobar as examples because I didn't think they were really practical examples. And then I try to give you, the repeat and the times, but I think we could do better and give better real world examples. But I'm just asking right now, Slack in the channel, what questions do you have regarding the lab? And it seems really quiet. No one's asking a question. Now, you don't have any questions and you figured it all out. And that's awesome. I don't need to, okay. I had a function called repmaster. Input's a function. Input should be able to be used with the function. The function used an argument must return a string. Result of the string passed as an argument to the argument. As an argument to the argument function, it returns the result of whose. Okay. Oh, is this just before? Let me take a look. Is that just before?
It's just before Hungry for More. It's number 3.
Got it. Okay. It's number 3, right? This one right here. Okay. Let's see if there's any questions about the previous material too, because that's we can go through that solution too.
I'm still kind of stuck on the problem right above the set interval and set timeout.
Okay. All right, cool. You can take a look at that too. I mean, I want to kind of go through everything. I don't personally want to build out everything. I want to save us some time, but I like these two. I definitely want to see those two solutions. What about, was this easy or was that hard? Like jumping into that portion, I jumped into a few rooms. It seemed like maybe it was taking a little bit of time to kind of get that logic. Maybe it wasn't, right? But we can. Let me see.
I thought that part was, hey, it's Tara, sorry. I thought that part was okay. In our group, we fiddled with it a little bit, just trying out different things just to help us understand what was supposed to happen and when.
Okay. And so this kind of gave you a general overview of the callbacks, right? Almost what we had done was done in this particular assignment. So it really wasn't too hard. Let me just say.
The only thing that confused me on that one was step number 5, just kind of the wording of number 5.
Okay.
Like when it said alter the first functions that it invokes its parameter. Got
it. Okay, so I'll walk through this really quickly. It'll take me like a minute and a half to really just kind of type through this. Create a function that takes in a parameter. I'm just going to do this, const func1, right, or func1, just so that I can have the functions, function1, function2, right, that takes in a parameter and logs it. So it takes in something. I don't know what that thing is. It just says takes in a parameter. You could create or say whatever you want. I could even call it parameter. It doesn't matter. All it's going to do, const function1 is equal to, right, like between creating normal functions and these functions, right, console log param, whatever that is, right? I'm going to actually say something like backticks. Let me do this. Backticks and say this is param, boom, param, right? Now, if I run this, just move this over just a little bit. If I run it, I have to run the function. I have to call the function. So func1, call it, run it. This is param. It's undefined because they didn't pass in anything, right? So let me just pass in something, param. There we go. This is param, right? Easy enough. All right, the second one says create a function that console logs high. Now, it didn't tell you to test it. It just said do it. The expectation is you are going to test it, right? All right, so we know that works. Easy enough. I'm going to get rid of it for right now. Const func2 is equal to, right? Now, create a second function that just logs high. Doesn't take in anything, just logs high. So it doesn't take any parameters. It just console log, right? High. That's all. And we call func2, right? I mean, we already know what this is going to do. Func2 high. Easy enough. Okay. Invoke the first function, passing in the second function as a parameter. Okay, so invoke the first function. So func1, passing in the second function, func2. Easy enough, right? I mean, that's what it's saying. Passing in the second parameter. All right, I'm going to run it, and it shows me the actual function call. Look, it's actually showing me the innards of the function, right? That's what it's showing me. I actually see the inside of this function being console log. That really doesn't do much good for you. Obviously, they just want you to see, like, if you don't call the function, you see the function, right? Okay. And it says here, you should see a function reference being logged. Okay. After the first function, alter the first function so that it invokes its parameter. Invoking something means calling it. So when you invoke, so the words of like invoke really are synonymous with calling, right? Executing, right? These are all synonyms. Call, invoke, execute. And that's what we're going to do. So here, instead of doing this, console logging it now, I am going to execute the function. Invoke it, call it, right? And doing this should call the function. Now it says hi. I'm going to get rid of the console log because we don't really need the console log anymore. I don't need more than one thing. And I should just see a single hi, right? Because function 1 is calling function 2. That's all we see. Okay, now we're up to, now here we go, right? So that was the trouble point, right? You should see the function mirag and then alter the first function so that it invokes its parameter. So invoking the parameter just means calling that parameter. If the parameter is a function, you call the function, okay? If you did these steps correctly, you should see the console log hi, right? And so that's it. In a nutshell, it's kind of what we did, but we were passing things in and we were console logging things. All we did was add like a for loop to like loop over things, right? So add just a little bit complexity, add another parameter and do something. You got a question, Jake?
Oh, yeah. So basically, when you write param parenthesis at line 4, you're already telling it, hey, this is going to be a function?
Yes. So this means that it is a function because you added the params. If we passed in a variable, right, then that would have broken it. We would have gotten it. So just imagine this function expects that its parameter to be a function, right? It expects that it should be a function, but we don't pass in a function. I pass in a string of text. Doesn't matter what we pass in. What would happen? I don't know. Param is not a function, right? You're going to get the error because param that was passed in is a string of text, and you can't call a string of text because it's not a function.
Cool.
Okay? So this has to be a function in order for this to execute. Now remember, a function, right, means standard input should give you standard output, right? So if we created this function, we should know ahead of time that it's accepting a function and it's calling the function. If I give it standard input, the function it wants, then it should return back to me something of a return value of whatever that function does. Standard input, standard output, that's the ideal function, okay?
Yeah, I think the only thing that confused me there, that eventually we did get as a group, but the only thing that confused me with there is that you're calling a param and then you know, saying param parenthesis at 5, but then it's being renamed or it's disguising itself as like function 2 kind of.
Yeah.
Right.
And the naming of the functions are kind of like, I wouldn't call functions function 1s and function 2s. I don't call them foos and bars. There's no like mental construct there that you can be like, oh yeah, foo and bar. Like it just gets lost in the ephemeral because it doesn't have any true grounding to what its purpose is, right? They're really bad examples of like using as creating functions, but they're the most basic. And in the world of coding, foo and bar has been used everywhere. And it's just one of those things. Like as a developer, you're going to see foo and bar, right? Cool. And so I'm not going to go through the rest of this. Is just kind of like, see if you can guess what's happening here. I kind of want to get to the code. Okay. Just maybe jump into the electric mixer one, since that seems to be right. Heather, we'll go into the mixer one. Let's see. So for the mixer here, let me kind of move this over here. What do we got? Write a function called electric mixer that takes in one parameter as an attachment. Right, so I'm going to stop calling these, right? And I am going to, instead of dropping down further here, I'm going to just put the electric mixer up here so I don't have to keep browsing down, right? So create a function. So const electric mixer, right, is equal to, that takes in one parameter as an attachment, right? So I'm just going to say attachment, right? Move this over just a little bit. Right? So it's going to take in one parameter. We're going to call it an attachment because that's what it is. The electric mixer function should console log, this mixer is now plus the attachment. All right. So I'm just going to copy this text, right? I'm going to paste it in here and I will say console log, right? And I'm going to keep using the backticks from this point on. I like the backticks. I like using string interpolation. I don't really care for concatenation or anything like that. And so this should work. Now, all we have to do is pass it something, right? And it even says here, like, Invoke the electric mixer using an anonymous function as an argument. Okay, the return of the anonymous function should be a string. All right, so we're doing this first though, right? I guess we're doing this first. Okay, so we console log it. I'm just going to make sure electric mixer works, right? I don't know, Blender. I don't know. I'm just going to say Blender. I don't really know. We're just going to do it, right? And we should see what happened. Electric mixer, this is now attachment. Electric mixer, oh, did I do this over here? Oh, because I left off the parens there, right? There we go. It's now a Blender. Easy enough. Okay. So invoke electric mixer using an anonymous function as an argument. Okay. Invoke the electric mixer using an anonymous function, which is this, right? Invoke the electric mixer using an anonymous function as the argument. The return of the anonymous function should be a string saying spiralizing. Okay, so it's really kind of giving you that example here, right? I'm assuming like this is the working example. Electric mixer now is taking in an anonymous function that returns this thing. Okay, so let's say if I copy this now, all right, electric mixer says it's this the first time it just takes the attachment, but if we pass in this, so now attachment here is being called, right? So in the first instance, it's being called, right? It just says, takes in one parameter, the function should return console log, the mixer is now plus the return value of the attachment. Okay. This to me would be the first step. I wouldn't have thought to do this unless they tell me to do something like that, right? So now they're changing it up. So this attachment is no longer going to be like a string of text. It's going to be some sort of function call, right? I should get, if I run this, I'm going to get the error, right? Attachment is not a function. Cool, because you can't pass in Blender. All right, that's not going to work anymore. So now we're passing in this anonymous function, okay? So attachment is now a callback in anonymous function, and it's returning spiralizing, right? All right, well, does it work? The mixer is now spiralizing. Awesome. Because we passed in an anonymous function and we called the anonymous function. Without these parens, we're going to see the internals of the function. The function didn't execute, it returned its code to you. With these parameters here, with the parens, it executes the function. Okay? So the callback function doesn't need to be anonymous. We can give it a name. We did that too, right? At first, I gave 2 anonymous functions to console log either one, and then we created functions with those, console log 1, console log 2, and this is the same use case. So it's like, hey, instead of passing this in, which really kind of hard codes the electric mixer, like if we do this, then every time I have to like write this out. But what if I want the return value of spiralizing to be used elsewhere too, right? Well, then we'd have to create, I'm going to say const spiralizer, right? Spiralizer is equal to a function, and then we're just going to return that here. So I take this out, put that there, and then we just return spiralizer, right? Let's see what happens. Okay, still the same thing. We're getting the return result. We're seeing the return result on the screen. Okay, because spiralizer is being put in here, and it looks like it's executing too, right? Spiralizer is actually being executed inside of here, right? I could spiralizing. The mixer is now electric mixer, it's doing the attachment, right? Same thing. This means that this spiralizer can be reused elsewhere in our code. Okay, so at any point in time, we are cooking, and in our code, we want to be like, oh, are we spiralizing now? Yeah, we'll grab the spiralizer function because it returns the keyword spiralizing. And so this becomes reusable in our code of cooking. At any point in time we want to spiralize, we can just get this. And a whole slew of supporting functions that return different keywords that can be used in any context that we want, okay? And the same thing with slicer, right? If we create this slicer dicer, right? Well, then if I feed it slicer dicer, we should get a different message, right? Boom. Now we're slicing and dicing, right? So just imagine if you were like creating an application that allowed you to like click on the slicer dicer icon, and you click on the slicer dicer icon, there's a message on the screen that's like, you're slicing and dicing, right? And then something says like, hey, click on spiral. Think of it like a kid's app, like a kid that's like playing with little icons on cooking. They see mommy or daddy cooking, they want to cook. There's a blender and they're like spiral and dicing, and there's like spiral and dicing. Hey, you want to like slice and dice? Click on the knife and cutting board, slicing and dicing, slicing and dicing. Anytime you click on it, it returns back the value. These become repetitive. They are hard-coded. So they're so hard-coded that they're very specialized in what they do, okay? But reusable. Remember, functions should be reusable. So when I said here, I'm just going to put here functions, right? Because that's kind of what we're talking about. Functions should be reusable. Keep that in mind with every function you write. How can I make this thing as reusable as possible? That's your thought process, okay? Set interval. So let's hit the set interval. I'm going to stop calling electric mixer. Let's see what we got here. To do this recording. Ooh. So. Okay, so I'm going to go here and we'll do this set timeout. Let's take a look. Set interval, set timeout. Right, set interval. Okay. All right. So why don't we go here? So we can still provide multiple arguments to a function, even if one of those arguments is a function. Sure, that's called a callback. Okay, so pseudocode for set interval and timeout. Right? So the function name, whatever you want to call it, callback function and milliseconds, right? It's almost kind of the reverse of what we did with repeat, right? In repeat, I had a number, the first position, and then a callback in the second position. Here, we're just flipping it. That's really all we're doing, okay? And that's it, right? Set timeout is the function, okay? It's taking in a callback. Here's the callback, right? And it's taking in milliseconds. Here's the milliseconds, okay? And then it's doing it again. And here, we want to execute, right? I mean, this is doing it. Oh, this is set timeout, which waits 2 seconds. And this is interval, which will keep perpetually going forever. Doesn't stop, okay? And then using set interval to display a number that increases by 1 second, by 1 each second, right? All right, let's take a look at that because I was helping a few work on the set interval thing, right? All right, so if we want to increase a number by 1 second, I'm just gonna get the structure for set interval. Set interval, let's just get it outputting a number, right? And then we'll do something. So every second, I want you to just right now console log something. Console log a number, right? Let's just put a number. Let's make sure it works. If I run this code, every second it's just going to do it. Awesome. So I know it works. Sweet. Okay. So now I'm going to do this. I want it to increase a number every second, right? I need to put that variable outside of this function because every time this runs, this function will get called every time, refreshing itself, doing the same thing over and over again, right? And a function, when it runs, reruns the same code, okay? So if I did do anything like this, just, you might have tried it like this. I don't know, let num is equal to 0, and then every time it runs, do num plus equals 1, and then console log num, and let's see what happens. Let's see if I run it. It's not increasing the number, right? And I can even add something here to just be like, this is num, right? And num Okay, and I'll run it again just so that you say, all right, why is that happening? So I just explained it. Can anyone recite it back to me? Why am I not seeing the number increase? Who can tell me why the number is not increasing?
Because it's not like in a loop or something.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually just adding one to the num variable before the console logged, not running before it.
Okay. All right. That's a good try. DJ, I like it. Who else? Let's see.
I think that maybe we have to put a loop, like that has to be inside a loop. So
Okay.
whenever the loop runs, 1, 2, that will increment. Maybe 1, 2, something.
Okay. So you think a loop should go in here? Some sort
No,
of
no,
looping?
outside. Like that should go inside a
Okay.
loop.
What should I
Like,
take outside? What should I put here?
something we can do for let E.
Oh, I got what you're saying.
Yeah.
Michael, you think a for loop should go out there? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's
And
number two.
Also, we can do like a while loop maybe. While this is
Okay.
true, then do this, something like that.
Okay. I like the thinking. I like the ideas. Now remember, I did mention why this thing is happening. I'm just curious. Like I mentioned it. If it's stuck, if it didn't stick, that's okay. Okay. What happens if I do this? What if I take this variable and I put it outside of this loop? What if I just do this? What would happen then? Did I fix it? So who can explain why that happened? Why is it that the number 1 just kept appearing while it was inside of it, but now the number is increasing when all I did was move it outside? What's the logic there? Like if you had to think about it.
Because every time it was running, it was just going back to 0.
Correct, right? Every time you call a function, the function reruns its internal code. It's kind of resetting everything back to its default values. That's the purpose of the function, right? So this callback is a function. And so every 1 second set interval is recalling the function, always perpetually recalling the function, thereby let num is always 0, and we only get to increment it by 1 because the next second num is set to 0, and then we increment it only by 1. So we have to remove it out of the function so it has some space to grow and increase, and it's not being reset by this perpetual reset. Okay? Now there was a question as in how would we stop this thing from running, say, 3 times, right? Now, we didn't teach it. We gave set interval and set interval and set timeout, but there's this other thing. Now, I'm going to show it to you. So I'm just going to put SI for set interval, okay? I'm going to run it. Now watch. The code runs immediately, right? I mean, I stored it in a variable, but the thing is running on its own, right? Because it's configured to do so. What I can do is this. I can say if num is equal, I don't know, I'm just going to say 2, so it only runs 2 times. I'm going to call another function called clear interval. And I'm going to pass it the set interval function. And watch what happens. 2, done, it stops. Okay? Just so that you know, clear interval and set interval are kind of used in coordination with each other. Set interval will keep going. And clear interval is the only way to stop the set interval. Otherwise, it will go to infinity. It will just keep running. So you want to stop it, okay? This wasn't asked in here, but I did see a few trying to do that, which is a good thing. You probably see it keep running. You're like, how do I stop it? Well, this is how you stop it, okay? Cool. That was the set interval one. Take a look. What do we got here? This section here, right? Okay. Create a function called word reverse that reverses a string. Oh my God, how appropriate. Did you not just do that earlier today? Right? We create a function that reverses a string of text. Okay. So forgot where our spreadsheet. I think I closed our spreadsheet that had the function. Does anyone have it open? Can anyone Slack it to me? I don't feel like really creating the reverse string of text function. Can anyone just put the code if you have it open?
I did it in a very different way, but I'll just test my hand on some different.
I did too, because the for loop in the original function reversed the actual letters as well as the words. So I had to do it a bit of a different way using an array.
Got it. So let me read through this. Maybe I'm not fully grasping what it is, right? Create a function that reverses a string of text. Cool. Similar to what we did. Create a function called uppercase that capitalizes every string. That's could be the same thing, right? Write a function called repMaster, accepts 2 arguments, inputs a function. All right. So let me write these 2 because this one looks like it's going to take more brain power to kind of get through that. Let me just say I got two submissions here. All right, so here we go. Word reverse, word reverse. Let me say, I'm going to take the first one. So Chris, I'm working with your code here. Code graciously provided by Chris, right? Word reverse. Okay. So you are doing something different, right? You're splitting the string into an array. You're reversing it using its reverse method. Then you're joining it. So this is a different way of doing it, right? And we didn't get to all of the array methods. And this thing doesn't tell you how to do it. Remember earlier when I was like, reverse a string of text, you can't use arrays. Someone even asked, can we not use arrays? And I was like, no, but this is a use case for using the array. So if I was to take a string, I can use an array method that splits the string into characters and puts them into an array, right? So whatever the string is, it would look like this. Once this was run, it would look like this. H, E, right? It would look like that. L, right? That's what this method does, okay? Then the reverse method reverses it in the array. It takes an array and it reverses the array. And then you join it back into a string. Now, once again, either you knew that ahead of time or you learned it in one of the previous lectures or you just did it maybe on one of the coding challenges. And then you return it. Easy enough. So we got that. That function would do it. And if we tested it, right, if I was like, all right, I'm going to stop this from running perpetually here, right? If we were to call this word reverse, and just give it, once again, hello, boom, we get, oh, did it split it? Didn't look like it word reversed it, though. Why is that? Because, let me see. Is it?
The space is a separator. There's no space in there.
Yes. Get rid of that.
If you go through the rest of it, though, it's a string of like a sentence of text. So that's why it didn't work by removing the separator.
Got it.
You had to add the spaces in.
So you got to split it. You join it by the columns, right? No, that's just joining it by the columns. Let me see. Join it right here. Awesome. Okay. So this works for just a normal string. Okay. Putting the spaces there would have done something else, right? Okay. Putting the spaces there creates an array of one single word. Without the space, it's a single, it's this construct here. Okay. So create a function called toUpperCase that capitalizes the string. Let me just get yours. We'll take this, right? toUpperCase, right? toUpperCase is the method. So it says that capitalizes every letter in a string, and toUpperCase capitalizes every letter in a string, right? We could have used a for loop, grabbed every character, made it uppercase, pushed it into a string of text, right? I wouldn't do that knowing that I have this method. So a little bit of research, you would have probably gotten this one, right? So if we were to just console log word reverse, uppercase, right? To uppercase, and give it once again, hello, we should see reverse a string of text and then just the word with uppercase, right? It's easy enough. Okay. Now it's the last one here, this REPL one, right? So let me get what you got here. And let's see what we got here. Boop, boop, boop. All right. So REPL master. Okay. REPL master. So rep, it's taking an input and a function callback, right? Func is synonymous with callback, right? It's taking in a function. All right.
I originally had function spelled out there, and it was throwing an error because it was looking for the parentheses to call the function, so I had to change it to func.
Yeah, function is a key word. So you can't use function, you can't use const and let as like parameters or values for things because they are key words, so they're not permitted, okay? So it takes in an input and a function, okay? And it's gonna call the function, it's gonna take in the string of input and turn it to lowercase, and then just output some text. That's really what it does, right? Okay, so it takes it in, gives you some, and then it calls word reverse, string of text and a function, right? So when you're calling word reverse, here you're doing this. Now this says to lowercase, right? So this almost, is this gonna work? Let me see. Right, I am never, where is it? So we're calling rep master here. I'm just going to call one rep master at a time and stop console logging this. So I don't see multiple things, and stop console logging this. I don't want to see everything. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move the rep master up here since that's the sequence that I was doing. All right, so let me run it.
You have to add the spaces into the split and the join again.
Here? Oh, gotcha. Oh, which also means because of the way we created this too, the positions of it, since this was created as a const, it has to be put above this function. You can't call this function until it's been defined if you're using the const. Like if I run this now, I get an error that says func is not a function, right? That's because these two functions need to be above here if they are going to be called later on. They have to be defined above here, okay? Let me run this. Okay, so blockhead, blockhead to a heart, right? To a heart to give your never proves. Okay, I'm just trying to understand the text here. Where's block? Oh, here's blockhead, right? Oh, because you reversed it. Yeah, I'm like, my head's like, I don't understand what it's trying to say.
Yeah,
so
you can see the output.
Yeah. So here, blockhead reverse never gives, right, up to never, right? There you go. That reverses the string of text, and it calls the word reverse. So rep master takes in an input of text, this text, and then it calls this function, right? And it just lower cases it there, okay? So that's what was happening there. And then here's the other rep master. Let me just move this up here, right? And then this one, I'm going to console log out this one. This one does the same thing. It takes in a string of text and just does two uppercase on that string of text. And that's why this string of text is uppercase now. Okay? Oh, I'm going to mute you. Can you mute yourself? Yeah. Awesome. Okay, and then there's the hungry for more section. I won't go into the hungry for more section. That's just kind of the events. I want to jump into the other material. All right, do we have any questions left on this? Let me see if there's any questions in the, okay. Not seeing any additional questions here. So if you do have questions, feel free to ask them, okay? I want you to ask any questions that should be asked. I'm gonna say it's 3 o'clock now though. So what we'll do is we'll take a break, come back at 12 minutes past the hour, and then we'll jump in just a small review of a practical use case of the callbacks, so we can like ground ourselves in, and we'll jump into the second lecture. Okay. So let's take a break. Break time. Come back at 12 minutes past the hour. Oink. Okay. Array methods. Okay. So we'll move on from callbacks. Okay. And we're going to move on to the afternoon lecture. But before jump into that lecture, so I did Slack out the solution for this. Okay. So you have the solution for that REPL right there. Boop. Boop. Go back here. All right. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this code. This is on callbacks, but I'm going to create a new one and I'm going to Slack it out right now. So we can start the second portion. Got a lot of code there. So let me do this. Flex, raise, callbacks, lecture. And I'm going to get rid of all this. Bloop. Need all this. Oh, I think that's what I copied and pasted. All right, awesome. Boom. Let me Slack this out. Okay. I'm going to Slack it out. I'm actually going to add it as part here. I'm going to add it as the REPL notes. Here we go. And this is the afternoon lecture. Here we go. There you go. Just Slacked it out. Once again, same process. We want to fork and clone it. Now, I keep saying fork and clone. This is just forking with this. You're not downloading anything. Okay. You'll have all the code. I do something, you'll have it immediately. Won't get lost. Okay. So I wanted to try to use a more practical use case here for when we use callbacks, right? What's a really good use case for a callback? So, and what I'm going to be doing here will build on once we get to the array methods, because some of the array methods that I discussed that you're going to need, maybe I discussed it in passing, is the array methods that we will be discussing today. They're super important. Array methods are for each, map, filter, and reduce, okay? Those four methods are really good array, and I'm going to say here array looping methods because they loop. All three of those are looping constructs, okay? Now, before we get into those, let's get a real use case of when we would use those callbacks. Okay, so say I have here an array of grades, right? And the array of grades contains objects with students, right? And the students have a name property, they have a grade property, and they have, a gender, a sex, male or female. Okay. Well, what if we needed to determine, or we wanted to return back the male students or the female students, or students that are in grade 5 or grade 16 or grades greater than 4, right? Let's say that was a use case that we wanted to do, or even just student names that begin with J or B, whatever. So let's say we're going to filter for males or filter for females, right? Let's just use that as our use case right now. So if we want to filter for males, I'm going to create some code here, and I'm going to say const is boy or is male. How about that? Is male is equal to, I'm going to ultimately pass in a student, and that student dot sex is equal to male. Okay, uppercase M. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a function, right? I'm going to put just the parens around here so we can still conceptualize that it is a fat arrow function, right? And if this condition is true, it should return true, right? Because it's going to return this condition. You don't always have to do like if the thing is this, return true, else return false. You don't have to do that. By default, it does this, okay? So let's do this now. Now I have grades and I want to do something like, I'm going to create another filter, const filter gender. Okay, well, gender is going to take in an array of things, right? Okay, so tool, you're going to take in an array of students, or maybe student array, and you're going to take in the function, the callback function. Okay, what are you going to do in this callback function? Well, I'm going to do things like I only want to return back a certain gender, right? And filter for gender, student array, callback. I'm also going to put in here, oh, we don't. We just need this. This will return it. Okay, so here we go. Watch this. Let new student array equal to an empty array, right? Okay, I need that because I need to return a brand new array of just a filtered subset. So ultimately, I'm going to have to take certain ones out of here. Like this needs to be copied and put into this array. If it's true, put it into this array. So I'm going to run now a looping construct for let I equal to 0, while I is less than student array, right? Dot length I plus equals 1. Okay? I have to loop over this array that will ultimately be passed in. Okay? And then I have the callback. And what I'm going to do now is run the condition. So callback right here. Okay. So I'm going to say if callback, if that's true, then new student array. Oh, so if callback, before I do this, in the callback, I have to pass it something, right? It needs a student. So I'm going to say student array bracket I, because we're looping over the array and I want to pass in the current student in the array and I want to pass it to this function. This function will grab that object, right? It's going to come in as student, but it's really going to be this object. This is the object that's going to be passed in here. This object has a key called sex, and that will return a value, and then we'll compare it to this, right? Anytime you see a dot, the thing before it is an object. Okay? That's what's happening here. If that's true, then I'm going to do new student array is equal to dot push the student at that position. Okay? That's what I'm doing now. Then the last thing, what's the last thing I would have to do here? Who wants to tell me the last thing that I would need to do?
You gotta return it.
Return the new student array, right? Because that's our filtered array. Awesome.
Hey, Joe, I got a question.
Sure.
So the first function, which the is male, why is it using student.sex if it's grades that shows in your object up there? I don't know.
But there's 3 keys in here: name,
Yeah.
grade, and sex.
Yeah. So
And I'm filtering based on gender right now, which is sex.
But the variable's name is grades, and you haven't connected it to.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Because if it's student.sex, it's supposed to access, right?
Okay, let me do this. Let me run in, just make sure
Okay.
like I didn't mistype something, because I feel like maybe I did something wrong. So I just want to make sure I'm not grades, right? Grades is the array that's being passed in. And then the callback function is mail, right? Is mail. Okay? If this runs, oh, what happened? What did I do? Maybe I did do something here wrong. What did I say? Constant filter from emails, filter gender. Did I do something? Oh, because look, can anyone tell me what the problem is here? Cons filter gender, grades is male. I almost feel like.
Are you trying to do the fat arrow notation there?
Yeah. So what did I do wrong here? Oh, yes. I keep forgetting the fat arrow notation because my brain is kind of stuck between the world of functions, creating them using the function keyword and fat arrow, because I do this all day, all the time in different variations. That's the exact reason. Now, does it work? What was my intent? To filter only the male students, right? Was I successful in filtering the male students? Was that my goal? I just want to make sure, like, maybe I didn't convey what I was truly trying to do, if there were any other assumptions. Did I filter for male? Right? I did.
Yeah.
We only see male there. I don't see female. I see male. Only male. Okay? Okay.
Yeah, I think for me at least, it was the understanding that when you created filter gender, student array as you've typed it is simply an argument, and now when we're calling the filter gender function, you plug in grades, which is the array that we've already declared up top.
Oh, yes. So this to me probably should have been called students, right?
Yeah, that's what got
Okay.
confused too.
Yeah.
I was like, what's going
I see. So I'm gonna change this to be students because I truly feel like it should be students. You know, I kind of copied and pasted that from another place. I was just like, oh, copy and paste it from something else that I had worked with. So I'll just put in students, right? And it still should work. Okay. I'm not sure why the array was called grades. I think under the context of what it was, that was it. So I'm going to give you a minute now. I want you to filter for females or the female gender. So I'm going to give you a minute to do what you need to do to return back only females. Okay? The female gender. Okay. I'm also putting a thumbs up here. I just want to get a heads up of like who can get it done. What's the timing constraints for it? Okay, cool. Looks like it's coming in here. Awesome. Just going to give everyone a moment. Really want, if you got it, that's great. A good number so far. We got 8 so far. I'm going to undo mine. We got 9. Sweet. All right, we got 12. $13, $14. Good number. 16. Okay. Pretty close. All right. Let me go over the solution.
Joe, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Why aren't there curly brackets wrapped around the student.sex?
Here?
In line 19, yeah.
Okay. So some of the things with fat arrows. Okay. Let me just put a note here for using fat arrow functions. Okay. Functions. So a few things. I did add parens around here first, and we didn't need the parens, right? So if there is only one param, right, then no need for parens there. Let's just put that one. Okay. The default nature. Okay, here we go. Put it better this way. If there is only one line of code, then you don't need parens. Okay? And we only have one line of code here. Oh, we don't need curlies, not parens. Curlies. So we don't need curlies if there's just one line of code. Okay? The last thing, I'm just going to make a note here of using fat arrows. Using fat arrows, I'm going to put a little note as though these are solid bullet points for them, is that without curlies, which means one line of code, it returns the thing. Okay? It has a default return functionality. Okay? Normal functions with curly braces don't return anything until you use the return keyword, right? I mean, they do return something. They return undefined. Without the return keyword, nothing leaves the function. Okay? Without the curly, it calls the default return keyword. It's like built into it. So I'm going to put a note here. If you do use curlies, then you must use the return keyword.
Yeah,
if
that
you
was
want
my
to get
problem.
something. What?
That was my problem. I used the curlies, but I forgot to put the return, and then it wasn't producing the array.
Okay. You can see why almost at times the fat arrow function is really streamlined, right? It's really clean. It's pretty code. It's kind of like step-by-step intuitive what's going on. Once you understand what it's doing, it really makes sense. It's like this is a parameter, and it's returning the value of what that equates to, which is sweet code. Instead of writing it like, we could have wrote it, let me do females and like, let me change it up a bit just to go back to the old way, right? The old school way of doing it. Would have been something like const is female, right? Equal to student. I'm just going to do this. Fat arrow, but now I'm going to do curly braces, okay? And now the fact that I'm doing curly braces, I have to do return student sex is equal to F. I have to do that because I got curly braces now. It is one line of code, but it's one line of code that includes curly braces. That would break it, okay? You could have also done something like the really long way of doing this would have been what? Would have been to do something like if student.sex is equal to female, right? Return true, right? Or return student. No, return true, right? Else don't do anything. We could have done that too. That would have been another thing. But it's a lot of lines of code. I don't really want to write all that code. This seems pretty clean.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
I got one more question, if again wouldn't mind. Talking about ternary operators with fat arrow functions right over there.
You talking ternary operators?
Yeah, with the fat arrow functions right
Oh,
here.
yeah. Put that in the parking lot because that's taking me in a different direction, DJ. Like, I don't want to use ternary operators just yet. I can talk about that later. I just don't want to like get sidetracked right now. is female. Okay. I just want to make sure all this works. And let's see what I got. Did I still get just, look, now I'm getting females, right? It's outputting only the last code block. If I console log that, you would also see it on the screen as well. If I did this console.log, you would see it on this in the terminal as well, but as console log text. So now it's working. All right, this is the code to do it, right? This is the long way to do it. And I don't want to leave it like that. I'm only giving it to you as the example of what you probably should not be doing. If you can opt to do it like this, please do it like that. Don't do it like this. Okay. Cool. I mean, there is a third way. And DJ, you did mention the ternary operator. I can show that. I just feel like I'm throwing so many new things. I don't want to throw too many new things, but we definitely will get to that. All right. Does this seem like a good use case for the callbacks? Okay. I just want to give you a practical use case. Now, you can use this logic for all sorts of things. Like this array has grades. So I can say, you know, if it's middle school, no, I don't know what grade that's going to start at, 12 or whatnot, or 8th grade or 7th grade. I forgot, 8th grade, I think. 9th. You could do that. You could do names. Whatever you want to do, you can do with these callbacks. They are reusable things, right?
Just to confirm, I've understood this. I feel like I've asked a lot of questions today, but the like in is female, in is male, the way that it connects to the student's array is actually in the filter gender callback.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Cool. Because it's being called here, right? So the filter gender is taking an array and a callback.
Yeah.
And so this just creates, this new array here was just created, and I'll add some notes. Store the filtered array of genders, right? That's what this new array is for. And then this loop iterates or loops over the array and performs and calls the callback function.
Yeah.
Right? And then this adds it.
Yeah.
If the condition is true, go ahead.
I think if I were to have written the is male, is female, at least right now, I probably would have like titled the parameter, I would have titled the array. I think that would make more sense, because I think that's what was throwing me off, is like student doesn't tell me that that's like what I'm looking for, like an array, if that makes sense.
Okay. Which section here, which keyword are you saying should be?
Like const is female equals, and then it says student. I probably would have put in array there.
Okay.
Like to make it make sense to me personally.
All right.
That's what I'm saying.
So just think about that though. What is student inside of this function? What exactly is?
It's a parameter though.
It is a parameter, but what is being passed to this thing?
It's calling an object.
One single object. This function, is male or is female, takes in a single object every time it's called. Every time it's called, it's a single instance of an object, right? And it needs to look through that single instance of an object and grab the sex keyword. And it does a comparison.
So you're saying, yeah, like if we wanted to, we could still pass in that object of student, but then like ask for grade instead.
Exactly. So each instance of student here is a single object, right? And so if we wanted to do grades, right, or names, I would create completely separate functions, right?
Yeah.
So just think like you're creating a code base. You've been tasked to create an application for like students and different kinds of purposes, right? And sometimes there's a filter up top, and the filter's like, hey, filter for males, like have a drop down and choose male or female. The drop down happens, you click male, and then I go to this function, I'm like, oh, they want male, so grab the male function and like filter, because all of the objects have a .sex keyword, right? They have a .sex key. And that works with the filter, right? Then you could like drop grades down, and then you could see grades from like, I don't know, 4th grade to 15th, whatever the grades are, right, to 12. And then if they click on a specific grade, you could then filter based on that grade, right? What if you did have to filter based on grade? Could you, why don't we just test the grounds here? You already got some good stuff here. What if we needed to do this? Filter the user. Let's do a user story. So the user story is this, right? And you're going to see this when you have to do your project. The user story, we're creating an application. So the user story is this. User needs to filter the array based on a single grade. What if you had to do that? Could you create the reusability that you could filter based on a specific grade? How would you do that? Okay, I want you to do that. I want you to take the same approach. Don't do this thing though, right? You actually, you might have to do something similar to that, but I don't know yet. I haven't thought this one through completely. But I want you to see if you can create the functionality that would allow us for the user to choose a grade, any grade, and return back that set of students that meets that grade, whatever it is. Okay? Think of the drop-down functionality. Drop-down, grade 7. Oh, I only see the students that are grade 7. So here, I'm going to select that out. I'm going to put a thumbs up here. When you've gotten that solution, work on that as a solution. User needs to filter the array based on a single grade. I don't know what that grade is right now. That grade is going to be dynamically given to us, okay? And you're free to think outside the box. Like, I want you to solve it. So if you feel you need to do something different than what we did, do the thing that you think needs to get done. I'd rather you solve it the best way you can than try to force it into a box that you just don't quite understand how to use just yet.
Hey Joe, can you repeat the user story again? Sorry.
Yeah. So user story is, I want you to filter the array based on a single grade. So one of the admins said, hey, hey, DJ, I know you're the computer person. Hey, can you add the code so that if I wanted to filter for grade 5, I could get all the students that are in grade 5 or grade 13?
Oh, okay.
That's all I want. Can you do that? I'd appreciate that. Seems like a tougher one, huh?
For me, it was a simple thing that I forgot. I tried copy and pasting, and that probably got me in trouble.
Okay. Jay, can you Slack me your code? Slack
Yeah.
it directly to me. Don't put it in the general Slack channel.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I just want to see. And Matthew, Slack me yours also, directly to me.
Ah.
Not in the, don't put it in the general. Slack it directly to me. I just want to take a look. Okay. I like it. Okay. So Jake, I see your solution has it like hard coded. You're like, is it 15?
Oh, yeah. Did you want us to do like 1 grade or above, or?
No, like I wanted you to solve a problem and you did, right? We can extend it. So ask yourself this: would it be practical at this point in time for you to create all those separate is grade 1, is grade 2, is grade 3? Would that be a practical approach? Or could you do something else to streamline passing in a bunch of A students and then making the grade dynamic? You did solve it, right? To a certain extent, right? Based on a single grade, you chose a single grade to be 15. But if I throw in the monkey wrench of like, well, what if the grade was 4?
Oh, I
What would
see.
you do then? What would you do? Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
So make it so that it could be, you can put in any grade.
Yeah. Let's try that.
Yep.
It sounds like I did the same thing as him. So
Okay, no, that's fine. Yeah, you can see why, Matt. I wanted people to send me their code because I want to make sure that you figured out how to solve like step 1, which is good because the fact that you figured out step 1 means you're on the right track to figuring out step 2. Okay.
Joe, I slacked you mine. Can you take a look at it?
Sure. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yours works. If what it looks like it works, I'm going to test it, but it looks like the solution I would be looking for.
Hey, Joe, would you mind taking a look at mine?
Yeah, I was just about to take a look at yours there. Yep, student matches, student, doing great. Yep. Looks just like it. Yep. It requires you to just extend your thought process, right? Like if you thought you were going to solve it exactly the way I created it, you can't solve it exactly the way I created it. You have to do it just so slightly that when you see it, you're like, oh man, I just thought a little bit more. Okay, so they're all coming in now. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so we got 5 so far. Looks good. Yep. Yeah. Axel, yours looks good too. I just saw it.
Thank you.
Sweet. It's gonna just give it another few minutes. Just another few minutes. I think what I'm going to do here is just, if you are kind of struggling with it, right? I want you to think of it like this. Okay. What if we had that? What if that was your starting point? Does that make a bit more sense? Let's just see. I'm going to give you just a few more minutes with that as a starting point. If you want to compare it to what you have, if that alone is enough to be like, oh man, I could solve this in the next minute, that's great. Click on the thumbs up. And those that solved it already, think of another use case. Think of something else that you could do if maybe it was greater than a certain grade, less than a certain grade, or students that have that are male or female that are in a specific grade, right? You could play this game all day. What is the average grade of all the students in a specific grade? So many potentials for you to kind of work through solutions here. All right, I'm going to give just one more minute and we'll jump into the solution, okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Chris, yours is very similar. I mean, you just changed the equal to a less than. You could filter by, but the name of the function should probably be more intuitive to what you're trying to do. So if you are filtering for grades that are less than a specific grade, then the function should probably suggest that the value that you're giving is because you're filtering for things that are less than that.
Makes sense.
Filter grades less than would be the name of the function. So I know what it does, right? All right, I'm gonna go back to this. So let's take a look. All right, I'm going to, all right. So I'm going to use filter grade, filter gender, filter grade. All right, cool. So Tara, this was your solution. I'm going to use your solution, okay? So we have this function here that is going to take in an array of students and a grade because I want it to be dynamic. So matches grade, right? Kind of like matches the grade that you give us. It looks at the student's grade and then compares it to the grade that you gave us. Okay, and then I have a filter grade function that still needs the student array. Now it needs a grade because it needs to be dynamic, and the callback function, right? And the callback function, so here's our student array, right? Then we're here into the for loop. This is a standard for loop, right? Then here's our condition. If the callback function, which is passed, which takes in the student, here's the student, and the grade, here's the grade. If that is true, push it into the array. Return the array. And so this should work, right? I'm going to comment out these filter by genders. Let's call this thing, right? So here's a grade, right? So, hey, let's filter for students with a grade is 13, and that the function is matches grade, and we get only one student, right? So if I go back up here, I see there is only one student, Jennifer. Is there any students that belong to multiple grades? So there is none that begin, they should have multiple things here. I'm just going to change this to 8. So we have 2 that should be returned, right? So I have something. So I'm going to change this to be 8, and we should get 2 students, and we get 2 students, right? 2 students are returned because now we're a little bit dynamic, right? At any point in time, we could pass in a grade and the supporting function that's like, I need a student and a grade, and if you give me that, this will work. And so this is dynamic now, right? This thing can be used anywhere that we need to match a student and the grade. Any filtering process, that works, and this is the use case. The user clicks on a drop-down of grades, bloop, and they get back all the students with that grade. It's a perfect use case. You do it all the time when you filter Amazon for products or Airbnb for products. You are running this code under the hood on any one of those sites because you filter all the time. Can't go to a website or shop without filtering. Like, it's impossible, right? Impossible. All right. So, any questions on this? Is there anything like that you really, really got stuck on? Once again, you can always put the questions in, Tech Talk. You can always put them in the Classroom Slack channel. Anything where you feel like needs to be addressed, you just want everyone to see the question, that's great. We can talk about it later. Okay. Okay. Sweet. So why don't we do this? It's 56 minutes. Why don't we take another 10 and come back at 6 minutes past the hour. So break time, come back at 6 minutes past the hour. Okay. So I only made one small change, Tara, to your code. I guess it made more sense to be like maybe is grade matches grade. Now, the only reason why I changed it to is grade instead of matches grade is this. One concept, and it's a side concept too. It's not like something you're ever going to really hear developers talk about. But I'm just going to mention it here that a function that returns true or false, like that's its job, true or false. That's all it returns, is called a predicate function. Okay, so a predicate function is just a term. Predicate function returns true or false. And since it returns true or false, it just kind of makes more sense to say is, right? Because is will be like you're asking the question, is it male? Is it female? Is it grade? Maybe matches grade. I don't know. I'm just doing it because it is a predicate function in the fact that it is returning only the thing if it's true or not, right? It's returning true or false. Is predicate kind of matches that statement. Okay? Predicate function. Its only job is to like do a comparison, say it's true. Do a comparison, say it's false. Whatever it is. Okay? Sweet. So I did Slack out the lecture earlier. So the lecture is array methods with callbacks. Wow. What a coincidence, right? So we're going to understand some of the various different callback methods used on an array and understand what each method does and when we might want to use it, right? Have we used any array methods before? Have there been any array methods we used thus far?
Push.
Any other?
Shift, unshift.
Yeah, shift, unshift, pop. That's another one. Pop is another one, right? Pops it out, gets it out, right? Are there any others? I think those.
Reverse.
Reverse, right? I did see reverse earlier today, right? So there's reverse. Let me just move this over here. Get the lecture over here. We did see reverse, right? So maybe it's going to ask the question here. We'll capture that, right? So some of them have been push, which is one standard one that we use. I'm going to do pop, removes it. Shift and unshift. And let me ask the question here. So Heather, what does shift do? Get ready, I'm going to start calling out people. What does shift do as a method? And if you don't know, you can ask, you can phone a friend. You can call anyone.
It takes away the first element in an array?
Yes, removes the first element, right? Okay, sweet. What does unshift do, Andre? What does unshift do? Unshift.
I guess the opposite, right?
Okay, which is?
Which is adding. No, yeah.
Okay. We don't usually use shift and unshift very often. So that's why I'm kind of just putting you on the spot. Like, we don't use it quite often. So what does it do is kind of my question. We know what push does. Pushes it to the back end of the array, right? This pushes it, adds to add to end of array. And pop does what? What does pop do? Pop would, Leanna, what does pop do? Almost there, Leanna. I almost can hear you. Almost, yeah. I mean, if you have audio problems, I can ask.
It removes the last element from the array.
Okay, there you go. Okay, just want to make sure, like, we know what these are, when to use them, and just, in not in hindsight because we haven't learned, but we did reverse a string of text earlier, and we can, if arrays are allowed to be used, we can use unshift to also do something to concatenate what would be a series of characters that we could then turn an array into a string of text. Just throwing it out there. Okay. One way to do it. All right, so all of these are all callback methods that arrays have. Right? There's things like every, filter, find by index, for each, map, reduce, some sort. The ones that I would say I used on a most common basis, most often, I'm going to say most often used, right? Because those are the ones you really want to focus in on. No point in like focusing on everyone because you don't really use a lot of them. Is filter. Of this list, I'm going down. Filter, find maybe, right? Because filter and find are pretty much there. Find index, which is, I'm going to put here index of. Okay, there's an index of method. Also, that's not there, but I'm thinking find index might be the one they're talking about. There is for each. There is map. There is reduce, and sum and sort too. I don't really use sum, and I don't really use every. Those are the kinds that I don't really use. I almost don't use find either. But these are the ones that are really common. Okay. And so what is an array method with a callback? Okay, so let's take a look at this. I got ice creams here. If I put the array of ice creams, right? Cool. I got ice creams. Just get this lecture just a little bit smaller so I can increase this just a little bit. All right. So what if I want to go over each item in this array and add the word ice cream to these items? Okay, well, how would you solve this? So luckily we have the map method. Okay, so map is a way to loop over every element in the array. Okay, now we could do this. No, let me take this array, right? Let me take this and say const updated ice creams is equal to ice creams. Oh, wait, what happened? Oh, I lost it all. Okay, const updated ice creams is equal to, I need to hear everyone. It's equal to ice creams dot map. Okay, now it takes in a callback. We've already learned what an anonymous callback looks like. Okay, so anonymous callback is this, right? That's an anonymous callback. But we have to give it something. We have to be like, well, what is the ice cream that we're talking about? So I'm going to say flavor or ice cream, whatever it is. I mean, these are flavors of ice creams, right? Okay, and we can return back flavor plus, my fingers keep hitting, plus ice cream, right? And if we console log this thing, console.log, updated, oh my God, so much to type. Right, or, yeah, I think that should work if I console log it. So let me do this. Now watch, vanilla ice cream, chocolate ice cream, strawberry ice cream, right? It's returning back something. So what did it return back? Who can tell me what this looks like? Here's the return value. Boom, boom, boom. What is that? What did it return back to me?
New array.
An array of data, right? It returned back an array of data. Okay. So something like map returns back an array, which is awesome. The intent of map, though, okay, let me give you what map is the use case for map is. Map is used to loop over and do something to every element in the array. Okay? With the intent of mutating something and returning back that specific mutation. That's when you use map. Map is meant to touch the thing, do something to the thing, and return back a mutated version of the thing. Okay? That's the intent of map. Use it all the time. You can even use map to do something like this too. It's not here, but what if I wanted to create a copy of ice creams? Right? I just want to show you something real quick. I'm going to go to developer tools. I want to really convey a concept that may not have been kind of conveyed up to this point. But let's say I do this. I'm going to say const ice creams, right? Ice creams, correct? Okay. So I'm going to do this now. Const array of ice creams is equal to ice creams. Okay. What did I do here? So if I said, Arik, what did I just do? It's pretty obvious, right? What am I trying to do just based on what you saw me do? Okay.
Wait.
Okay, I'm waiting.
Uh,
I'm not going anywhere.
all right. You got the flavors.
Just look what I did. I only did like.
Oh, you made an array of the flavors.
Okay. All right.
My bad. My dog was like doing something.
Oh, okay. No.
Dog
ate my homework. I get it. You only get to use that once, Rick. Only one time.
Yeah, he's like
just used it. No, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Scott, let's move on. Scott, what happened? Unless your cat was eating something, I don't know.
So you created an array under ice creams, and then you created another array.
Okay.
Is that so you can have an array of arrays?
Okay, well, is it really an array of arrays, or did I really just take one copy of one array and try to create another copy?
Yeah, I guess so. You just pass that array into another one. Yeah.
Look at the output. Like here I say ice creams, and then here I'm saying show me ice creams, and then this is ice creams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here is const array of ice creams, where I'm trying to set it to be this array. I output it, and here's the result.
Yeah.
We've
So
ultimately, yeah. So our assumption is that I've created a duplicate copy of ice creams, correct? Is that everyone's assumption? Do we feel good about that? I feel pretty positive. If somebody's like, what's happening here? I'm like, you created a duplicate copy of the thing. Great. All right.
If the original array is modified, does that modify the following array?
All right. What's that?
If the original array ice creams is modified, will that modify the array of ice creams also?
Right. So that's kind of where I'm going, right? So if our assumption is that I made a copy, right? And that's kind of what I'm conveying here. Is it really a copy? So what would happen if I did this? If I took the array of ice creams and I push a new flavor into that array. So we got vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, I don't know, lemon ice cream. It's not even a good flavor. I don't know. I'm going to push that in. Boop. It's pushed in. It's got 5 things. Look, array of ice creams, 5 things. What happened to the ice creams array? So does the ice creams array have that new flavor or not? So hands up if you think the ice creams array contains that flavor. Give me a hands up if you do. Nobody's putting their hands up. So I'm assuming, put your hands up if you think it doesn't contain it. There you go. Like I want live people. Right. That's it. All right, good. You can put your hands down. Thanks. All right. So let's take a look. Oh my God, it contains it. You can see I was doing this to trip you up in the first place. You got to assume like he's asking the question because, all right. So the question is, the answer to like the question is, did I create a copy? Not really. I just pointed to the same reference that something was pointed to, okay? So in the world of JavaScript and like the memory space, when we created the array and we put it as like a reference in memory. So it's sitting here in memory and like this variable ice cream is pointing to this reference. And then all of a sudden I say, hey, I want to create a copy of this, but this is pointing to this. So when I create that copy, I create another instance. That instance is pointing to the same array. They're both pointing back to the same thing. They're both going back here, okay? And that means that it's a reference. Arrays and objects are reference data types. Strings and numbers are primitive data types. They're just two different things. This is one instance where it is. So if you ever did this, you'd be mutating the original array, and you don't want to do that, right? Okay. The reason why I'm going down this road is because the other use case for a map would be to, if the map is returning back to me every element in the array, what's a good use case for that right now?
Map, I guess.
Okay, so if I'm using map, what's a good use case? Based on what I just showed you, what's a good use case for using map?
So you're gonna create a function that looks into the array and creates a new array itself. In this case, it's not referencing the other array. It's gonna create a brand new array with the new
exactly
with the new added or something.
So icecreams.map, right? I'm just gonna do flavor. We don't need. I'm gonna do it shorthand here with it. I'm not returning anything. I'm just gonna do this. Flavor. Does that make sense? If I had to ask you to kind of explain what's happening here. So if I was like, I don't know, Jose, you're super quiet. Your turn. What's happening there? What am I doing? Can you explain what's happening inside of here?
Yeah, you're pretty much creating a new array so it doesn't affect the original ice creams array, the updated ice creams.
Cool. So walk me through this code right there. What's happening there? Talk to me like verbally, like exactly what's happening.
Let me see.
Like I know you know what's happening, but can you explain what that code is truly doing, right?
It's just duplicating the array.
Okay. So we could say like this is the current flavor, right? At that moment, because it is a loop, and it's returning the current flavor. Remember I had some rules up here? Was it here that I had the rules for the fat arrow functions? One of those was without curlies, it returns the thing, right? That was the rule. I'm going to put that rule down here. Without curlies, it returns the thing. I give it the thing, the flavor, the single flavor. It returns the single flavor, which means now I have a duplicate array. And if I show this duplicate array here, boop, boop, look, I get a duplicate array of the original array, okay? I'm going to do this just to show. I'm going to push, once again, lemon ice cream into there. And I am going to show duplicate array. Duplicate array. Let's see. And look, it's got lemon. And now I'm going to show ice creams to make sure that ice creams does not contain that thing. See? So this process here, what I just did, creates a duplicate of an array. Okay? That's one way to do a duplicate. So I'm just trying to give you like solid use cases for map. The two instances that I use map is to create a duplicate array and to mutate every instance of the thing in the array. That's it. Okay? That's the only thing that I would do for map. Okay? And with that in mind, like returning back things, right? I mean, I guess if we went back to like one of these simple ones up here, right? Filter gender or something like that. Maybe we could have used fill map there to like map over the array and like return something if it meets a condition. I don't know. Not a good use case for it because it is meant to return everything in the array, everything. You don't use map to filter. You use map to mutate, okay? Map returns back an array, okay? Map is used to loop over the array and do something to every element in the array. It returns a brand new array, okay? And it's meant to do something, to everything in the array, okay? And I'm gonna just put here a note. Do not use map to act like a filter. Why wouldn't I use map to act like a filter? I'm just gonna go down here. Take a look at line 71. Why would I not use map? Chris, give it to me.
We have a filter.
Yo, bingo. You just hit it out of the park, right? There's a map, there's a method that filters. Awesome. So now I can filter if I want to, okay? So here we go. So maybe I could do this, right? We had this, I'm gonna go back here, maybe filter by gender. So what if I change this filter by gender? I'm gonna just do this. I'm gonna copy this, but I'm gonna comment it out. So I can create, I'm gonna go down here. We don't need these anymore. I'm gonna put our filter by gender here, and now I'm gonna walk you through filter, okay? Here's filter. Filter would allow you to filter something, right? And we do have callback here, and we know that if I pass it, what if I pass it is male or is female, right? We should be able to get the students, right? Okay. What if I could not do this anymore, like this for loop? I don't really want to do that. You know why? Because I got an array method that filters. Awesome. So let me do this. I'm going to kind of get rid of this. I'm going to shorten this up. Watch this. What if we could do this? Now, filter also, let me put another note here, returns a new array. Awesome. Well, what's the point of it? It returns a new array. I'm going to say here returns a filtered set of elements as a new array. Okay? It's meant to filter. Exactly what its name is, filter. So if I take this and I say students array dot filter, right? Okay. It takes in a current thing, student, that's the current thing, and it's going to filter that current thing, right? Now I do have the is male, and I can pass it the student right here. I'm gonna get rid of this. I don't need this anymore, right? It's looking pretty clean cut. Now let me do a filter gender. Let's see what happens. Okay, return students. Oh, it looks like it's just returning this function. Okay, so it's returning filter gender function. Oh, because I didn't call it, right? I just have filter gender here, but I never passed it in the student array and the is male here. And so I'm going to change this to be, I think I hard coded too much there, callback, right? Let's take a look. Oh, what happened here? A student array is not defined. So let me see, where is student array? Students, oh,
Yeah,
here.
103.
103
Yeah.
should be students.
This should be student array, right? Maybe students array, yeah. Student array, new student array. And this should be students, right?
Yeah.
All right. There we go. Look, I got a filtered array of males, right? If I want a filtered array of females, all I have to do is say is female. And look, all females. So does this code here, does that seem better, right? Get rid of this comment here, right? That to me seems a lot shorter and terse, right? Instead of doing a for loop, let me tell you, now that you know these methods, you'll never do a for loop unless you need to do a for loop. If somebody says loop 10 times, you'll use a for loop because you said loop 10 times. If somebody's like, here's an array of things, can you like do something to the thing? Can you filter this out? You're never going to use a for loop ever again. Like that's kind of out of your realm. I almost never use for loops unless I'm teaching for loops, okay, or while loops. I never do that anymore because I have arrays that allow me to do this thing, okay? I can even shorten this to this, watch.
So Joe, what's the, like, I guess what's the point then of having for loops if you never use them?
Okay, so there are going to be times when you need to kind of loop a number of times. And maybe that I'm looping over the number of times. I'm not looping over an array of things, but I have to loop a number of times, right? Whatever that use case is, that it says do the thing 5 times. Okay, if it says do it 5 times, then I need a for loop, right? Because I don't have an array length to like do the thing, right? Just do it 5 times and you do it 5 times. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the use cases. But the other reason why you are kind of taught for loops also, what do you think is happening inside of the map? If you're on an interview and you learn .map and they're like, hey, can you kind of just explain what's happening under the map? Can you tell me? What would you say?
It's a method of for loop that takes over for loop in these cases, which since you're not looping through a number of times, just looping through an array.
Exactly. So under the hood of a map or a filter, you're actually running a for loop. That's what you're running. You're literally running a for loop under the hood of a filter. And you know how I know that? How do we know that? Because look, you wrote the code earlier. You did a for loop. You did a filter here, right? I mean, you built a filter earlier and you used a for loop to do it. Our filter method now on the array is doing the exact same thing that this code did. Exactly the same thing. And it's even taking in a callback function. It's even taking in the grade that you want or the thing. It's taking in a student, right? So in this instance, it's taking in a student, right? And it's taking in or calling this callback, right? But the filter is, this whole thing right here is a callback. The whole thing is a callback, okay? Same here. Whole thing is a callback. And we could have even shortened this one more step. How could I have shortened this? Any ideas? How could I shorten this code? Who's got an idea?
Remove the curly braces.
What's that?
Remove the curly braces and remove return.
Got it. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to remove the curly brace, move the return key, move it up here, because the other rule, right, was this. Let me go back up here for our rules of fat arrow functions. If there is only one param, there's no need for parens, which we're using. If there is only one line of code, you don't need curlies. I'm going to go back down here. Boom. Filtered function. If there is only one line of code, you don't need curlies. Let me run the thing and let's see if this works. It should work. There you go. Still works. And I can change this too now. Once again, I can say is male. Right? That is really kind of beautiful code. So streamlined. Right? If I do this, super easy and intuitive to understand. Okay? I don't know. I don't think, let me see. Can I move this to the other line? I don't think so. Oh, yeah, you can. Look. I can even put that on the other line just to keep it short. And it still works. One line of code, you don't need curlies. 2 lines of code. Now watch this. If I happen to add console log, yes, it breaks. Because the rule is 1 line of code, you don't need curlies. 2 lines of code, you need the curlies. Because then it doesn't know what to return. It's like, oh my God, I got 2 things here. I don't know what to return. So now you have to tell me what to return. Because you got multiple lines of code. Is it the first line I should return? Is it the second line I should return? I don't know what to do. Okay?
Now, how does that double arrow work in that line again, though? Like, I'm not used to seeing 2 fat arrows.
Oh, here you mean?
You have, like 1 fat arrow above it, though, and in the line below. So 97 and 98.
Okay, so here we go. So filter, in this instance, right? Filter is using the fat arrow syntax. Okay? And the rules of the fat arrow syntax are it returns a thing, right? Don't use curly.
It's a function itself.
Exactly.
Okay.
This is a callback right here. Okay? It's a callback function. I actually move this. This line actually goes up here. It's a callback function.
Yeah.
This itself is a callback function that is calling this other callback function. Okay? That's really it. Okay? This is a good use case. You're going to see this. Now, did anyone read Eloquent JavaScript, like all of the chapters? Once again, it's a big ask that you read it. One of the chapters, I think chapter 5, is using I think it's higher order functions, and higher order functions covers this concept here. Once again, it's really, really deep. So deep, sometimes it's hard for me to understand. Okay? Cool. So that's for each filter. Let me just do this. For each. Okay? And the for each function, what does it do? Okay. So the for each function, let's do this. I mean, there's a lot of methods to cover here. I'm just looking at, the lecture was really like you searching up with these methods and coming up with examples. But once again, there's only a handful of them that you're actually going to use. Okay, and I'm trying to cover like the main ones that you're going to use. Okay. I just want to make sure, let me go to the labs. I just kind of want to make sure array callbacks lab, and you have these methods to kind of do it. All right. Map for filter every, all right. Every filter find for each, find by index map. Here's filter. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to show you the for each, and then I'm going to have you do the lab, but I'm only going to have you target specific ones for now. Okay, so for each, what does for each do? Once again, it's a looping construct. And you know what it doesn't do? It doesn't return a new array. It doesn't. It's the only one of these mapping constructs that doesn't return a new array. So what's its purpose? Like if it doesn't return a new array, well, what the hell is it used for, right? Here's it. It's meant to touch every element in the array, but not return it. Okay, like a lot of the times a for each is just like do the thing and then maybe like console log the thing. I don't want a new array. Okay, really that's all I would use for each for. For each is kind of like a map, but it doesn't return anything. I'm just trying to think of when I use for eaches. I don't really have, like, at the top of my head, I don't have the use case for it because it's not returning anything. But think like the best use case that I can think of or compare it to is for each is this. Does a function always need to return something? So if I ask that question, Dan, does a function always need to return something?
No.
Okay. So if a function doesn't return something at that time, what is the purpose of the function? I feel like I got you in headlights.
You do.
Okay. All right. So phone a friend. Who do you want to call to help you out with that answer?
Chris, can you help me out?
Chris, help Dan out. If I'm using a function that doesn't return anything, why am I using a function?
Block of code to do a calculation.
Okay, right? Functions don't always have to return things, but they do something. Okay? Think of it like this. There might be some manipulation in the DOM. You're going to get to manipulating the DOM soon. And so if I have a button on the screen and I click the button, right, and I want to see something, I can call a function that just puts something on the screen. It itself doesn't need to return anything back, but it itself needs to show something on the screen, right? I'm going to put the text on the screen. So it doesn't get called and like return the text. It gets called to add the text to the screen. It's doing something. It doesn't need to return something that then does the thing. It can do the thing, right? Plenty of use cases where I call functions that don't return me anything, but do a thing. They're like a little factory. They do the thing, and sometimes I don't need the thing returned back to me. I just need it done. Click on the button, do the thing. Awesome. Next. Okay? So for each is usually used to do that. Now, the examples here that they're giving is like console log each value of nums, array multiplied by 3, console log each word with an exclamation point at the end. I don't know. Is that super useful? I don't know. When you're talking about something like filter the array of numbers for less than 100. Filter the words that have a length. All right, that have an even length. That seems like a use case. What about map? Make a new array of each number multiplied by 100. Make a new array of all the words in uppercase. Do you see the difference? Like the use cases they're giving for each here are like console log the thing. All right, well, what do I do? It's like console log is not really helpful. Doesn't return back anything. Okay? So map, filter, and for each are the ones that you're going to kind of focus in on, right? And I want to say fine. All right, so let's do this. Got about a good solid 15 minutes. I'm going to slack out the lab here and just have you work on a few of these things, okay? So I'm going to slack out the lab. I'll put you in like breakout rooms for a little bit. And with the lab, I really only want you to focus on this, okay? Focus only on the following methods, okay? Because you're going to have some homework with this, so this will continue. Filter, map, okay? If you can do filter and map, great. Then do like for each or do some of the others. So I'm going to say focus only on the following methods: filter and map. If you can get filter and map, then you can work on the other methods, okay? For right now, I just want 2 methods, okay? Just those 2 methods in that. All right, I'm going to put us all into breakout rooms. Breakout rooms. All right. Hold on one second. Sometimes all right, I'm going to open up all the rooms. There we go. All the rooms open. Jump in. We'll be jumping in and out of the rooms. Okay. It's about another 20 seconds. All the rooms will close. Everyone's back. Almost done. We're almost done for the day. Sweet. Everyone's done. Okay. All right. So I put a kind of poll in the Slack channel. So if you're done with filter, click on it. If you're done with map, click on it. I just want to see how successful we were. So I got 6 filters, 3 maps so far. Actually, I'm one of those, so I'm removing myself. All right, 6 filters, 1 map. Okay. All right, let me go over these 2 solutions. And we're going to break and we'll do office hours. Once again, I don't want to push past 5, but I copied those 2 into our, the lectures that we were doing earlier, right? So I have the numbers array and I have the pentagrams array. Okay. I just copied the filter. So, this is filter and this is map. Okay, and these are the 2 things that we needed to do here. So in filter, I needed to filter filter the array for numbers less than 100. Okay, I create a function called filter less than 100. The nums array dot filter. Num becomes the current number in the loop. And then I return the num that is less than 100. And it returns the number that's less than 100. Okay, now I know it works. I'm going to comment out these, comment out this, and I'll run it. And I have all the numbers that are less than 100, right? Now I could flip it and say any number that's greater than 100, just so that we know that it works. If the number is greater than 100, look, all the numbers that are greater than 100, okay? So it's going to return, what filter does also is filter. Let me just see, did we do it up here? We did student grade. Oh, we're doing filter. I lost some of my code here. All right. Filter will return the thing if it meets the condition. That's what filter does. If it meets the condition, it returns the thing. Okay? That's what filter does. So filter words that have an even length. Okay. So I want to filter words that have an even length, which means if I divide that word by 2, modulus 2, this is where modulus 2 comes in handy, right? Modulus is something you were introduced to weeks ago, and modulus means that if the number is divisible by this number, it should return 0. If it's not divisible by 2 evenly, it returns what's left over. That's what modulus does. Okay? So in this instance, I'm saying here, return anything. I have the bang operator here because I want to return anything that's not 0. I'm sorry. I want to return it. If I just do this, it'll say if it's 0, 0 is false. Okay, 0 is not true. So I'm going to say if it's not false, and then it returns all words. Oh, here we go. Wrong one. Boop. That's it. It returns all words that are divided by 2. Watch, zeal, 4 characters, from 4 characters. So I can divide that evenly by 2 and nothing is returned. Okay? However, if I remove the bang operator, watch, the words that will be returned will be odd words. Look, 3-letter words, 3, 5-letter words, 5-letter words. Okay? That's the modulus. Now, if you weren't using modulus, you know, you in the end you have to use modulus for something like this. Modulus is used for like odds and evens for the most of the time that you're going to use it. Outside of FizzBuzz, we did FizzBuzz, right? Did we do FizzBuzz as, yeah, FizzBuzz you use modulus, but it was modulus 3, modulus 5, right? If the number was divisible by 3, or if the number was divisible by 5, you used it, okay? Yeah, it doesn't look like filter gender. Let's see, is this one what we did here? Yeah, I think, hold on one second. Because it like refreshed, I'm almost thinking, I mean, we'll just Slack me, so I just want to make sure. Raise callback. I think, I almost feel like, yeah. Hold on one second. I think when it flipped out, like it refreshed, I lost something. So here, yeah, so I lost a goat. So I'm going to do here. I'm going to go for each doesn't return an array. So I'm going to take what I was doing here and I'm going to put it into the other lecture because this, earlier when I copied this into it, it flipped out, it like refreshed and I didn't realize it was doing it. Okay, there we go. Can you check well and just make sure that it updated previous lecture? You have everything here?
I'm waiting for it to update. Yep, that's good now.
Yeah, this is part of the lecture. It just earlier when I copied this over, it like flipped out and refreshed, but it was doing a copy. I don't know why it copied. I didn't ask it to copy. All I did was paste this in there, and all of a sudden it created a separate REPL. Okay. So that's what the modulus operator does, and I'm just saying if it's, you know, not that, then return it. Okay. You'd still have to use the modulus to do evens. You wouldn't know if it's even or odd. Okay, and they both return a filtered subset of arrays. The next one is map. Map says make a new array of each number multiplied by 100. Okay, so it returns an array. Map is meant to touch every element in the array and return every element. It's not meant to filter, it's meant to mutate. So it takes the number, right? Once again, this is a callback. What's inside of here is a callback. It's a function. And it's like num is the current element in the loop. Then we take num and we times it by 100 and it returns this value. This value gets returned and plopped into a new array. Okay? And I know it is because there it is. Times 100, I get all these numbers, right? I know it works. If I did like times 1, then they'd be all the same numbers, and I wouldn't see such a large subset of numbers, right? But I times it by 100, okay? I get those large numbers. Now, the second one is uppercase words. I pass in a word, right? So this is the array. I'm looping over the array. I'm passing in a word as the current thing in the array. What's the current thing? Word. Whatever word or whatever position we're at, grab the word. Turn it to uppercase, return it. Grab the next word. Turn it to uppercase and return it. That's what's happening. It's a for each under the hood. And every word is uppercase. Okay? Every word is uppercase. I could have done lowercase too. I think they were all, right? Outside of like pack, 5, most of them are all lowercase already. So uppercase really stands out. Okay? These were the two I wanted you to kind of focus in on. All right. From the looks of it, just from, you know, the completion of it. Yeah, 8 and 2. All right. Once again, this might have thrown you off. If modulus threw you off, understandably, you haven't used it in a while. These two probably, now that you see them, I don't know, seems pretty intuitive now, right? And I'm just kind of compared to what we were doing earlier, and like, this was a filter, but we were using a callback to do it, right? Okay. This returned the ice creams, right? But here, return just the ice creams. Okay, so if I did this ice cream plus something, I could have added text there too, right? All right. Some good use cases. Do you have any questions on this material? And once again, you can always leave questions. I'm just going to open this up to put any questions here, and I'll answer them at any point in time. I'll just open up a thread right here. Feel free to ask questions. I'll keep it open, and I will answer anything that gets put in here. Okay. Feel free to ask questions. Okay. Once again, I'll do my best to answer any questions that are in there. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to assign the homework. All right, it's 5 o'clock. It's a little past 5. So the two things that we're going to do, I'm going to assign the homework and stay on for office hours till 6 o'clock. If anybody has any questions, I think me and Paul, let me see, is it Paul? Me and Paul are going to, yep. Jordan, right. Jordan's going to stay on. We're going to stick around for office hours. So if you have any questions, you can ask them. Let's slack it out. There it is. That's the homework. All right. And so the homework is combining data types and callbacks. Okay. Quite a few things in here. There's some optional Flexbox stuff. Now, we didn't get to Flexbox today because we had so much to cover, and it was more like a morning exercise also. And we did some coding examples for morning exercises. So the Flexbox is going to be for next time. I actually kind of even adjusted the, what I posted this morning to put Flexbox here just as a bonus if time was permitting, because the material that we were covering today was a lot of material. And I could not fit in Flexbox. Otherwise, I would have to drop something. There's just no time to do everything. Okay. And so you just read through this. Once again, just a bunch of coding stuff. The solutions are available, right? It's been told that you're not supposed to look at the solutions, but if you get stuck, by all means, look at them. But try really to kind of do it on your own, right? Exit tickets, right? I think the exit tickets, I'm just going to look for the exit ticket links. Yep, exit ticket links. Boop. Here we go. Exit ticket form was posted by Ira. Right? Is it this one? It's the one posted by Ira. I'm just trying to there's two things posted here. This looks like Ira posted it on December 2nd, and mine was posted on December 7th. So I think this is the one, right? Yeah, this looks like the one. Unless I reposted the same exit ticket. Let me just take a look. I think that might have just been a more, yeah, they're the same exit ticket. Okay, cool. Just want to make sure, either one. I'll take Ira's one and we'll put it in this Slack channel too, okay? So here we go. There we go. There's the exit ticket. And like I said, I'm going to be here. If you have any questions, if you want to kind of review the material, by all means, me and Jordan will stick around. But you're free to go if you so desire. But you're also free to stick around. And everyone's dropping off.